It's your girl, Deja, and the host of Black and Wild, the podcast. In this episode, I chat with a longtime friend that I met while I was working in Yosemite National Park, specifically in Yosemite Valley, and that is Justin Elkins, a self proclaimed lady of leisure and someone who likes to just exist in a space. Definitely relatable. Justin emphasizes that in the end, it's all about accessibility and the images that are perpetuated for given activities or places. Park accessibility goes beyond race, gender, or sexual orientation. Classism and ableism play a major role in how places appear or are literally accessible for particular groups. We can make national parks accessible for all, and as Justin puts it just takes effort. The woods are for everybody. I hope that you enjoy this episode with Justin as we learn a little bit more about Justin's background, how she got to Yosemite, and how her time in Yosemite National Park, the people that she's met along the way, the experiences that she's had, has created the woman that we see before us today, but has also inspired her to start a pride walk in Yosemite National Park that has gone on to inspire other national parks to follow a similar path. I do want to note that any opinions noted or represented in this episode or on this podcast are not representative of any agency or organization. Let's get into it. Hi, Justin.
Hi, hello, Deja.
How are
Thanks
you?
for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. You've been on my mind for quite a while, and I even thought of creating a podcast. And I'm just so excited to have you on to share your story and enlighten some folks of like what the experience is like living in a national park, being queer, but also, advocating not only for yourself, but also for your values and your beliefs. So, without putting words in your mouth, I want to let you introduce yourself and whatever you'd like to share about yourself in relation to this channel, or whatever you think is like relevant to this discussion. I'll give you the stage now.
All right. Hi, I'm Justin Elkins. I'm from Southern California. I came to Yosemite by way of Mariposa, California, which is where I still have some family. I've lived and worked here in Yosemite for 16 years. I started in 2008 when I was 18. I am a rustic cross-dresser. I use she, her pronouns. And I very much love the just beauty and the, sereneness of Yosemite. And I feel like that's one part of what's kept me there for so long.
Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing and giving some insight. See, I knew you came to Yosemite through Mariposa, but I didn't know you have connections to Southern California as well. So, again, I'm excited to get to know you better too. Would you mind sharing? I don't even know if I fully remember the exact moment, but can you share for the audience who may not know how you and I are connected? How do we know each other?
I know Deja through working also in Yosemite National Park for several seasons. And she's also a good friend of another good friend of mine, which is Eddie. And so we have both got to kind of experience the growth and the magic of Yosemite together. And then also I know, like, after that, Deja moved on to Mammoth, and so I've kind of continued to watch her adventures in the national park system, and then watching her beginning of her advocacy for making the outdoors more of like an open and acceptable place. I think I remember you working at, was it the Devil's Post pile? Uh-huh. And I remember just following your journey on Instagram. So that's how Deja and I know each other.
Like I'll say I might have been a CC night or something, but I do remember at least seeing you from afar and knowing of the Queen of Huff. Um, and just knowing that you were a force to reckon with. And so I was just I'm so thankful that our relationship has evolved over the years beyond those beginning days of being young and dumb.
Yes,
But
yes,
it
especially in the
really
CC.
essentially, yeah, not everyone knows about the CC days. But yeah, it's just been really neat to see you blossom into this person that you are today. And I just can't wait to share some of that journey with other people, but also get to know you a little bit better as well. So thanks for enlightening the audience for me.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you came to Yosemite in 2018. And so who was Justin in 2018? Are you anything like who you are today? Like, were you already aware of your queerness? Like, what was that time like for you transitioning from Southern California into living in a national park?
Yeah, I might have said 2018, but what I meant was
I mean,
2008.
2008, you're right.
Um,
Thanks.
uh, well, when I first moved to Yosemite, I was um very much a like more kind of like reserved kind of emo-ish kind of kid. Um, you know, as is the story with so many queer people.
That's
I
true.
didn't have a very great coming out process, and I ended up getting kicked out of my house two times, once when I was 16 and then again when I was 18. And because I was from a family with a history of domestic violence, I was part of a program that like basically guaranteed me a job up here in the park. And
Oh.
so I was kind of sent here against my will. um, but so like, when I first moved here, I was um much more like reserved, but like I started to blossom like, almost immediately. My first like real Halloween here, I dressed up as the Queen of Hearts, and I had like a deck of cards that I made into a crown, and then I had like a mini umbrella with the ace through 10 of hearts dangling from strings, and it was like it felt like it was the first time anybody in this place had ever seen anything like it. I'll tell you what, because I won the best male and the best female costume of 2009 at Halloween. And then they had to make a rule saying you can't win both of them after that. And that's what really reawoken and made me remember how much I loved and enjoyed dressing in drag as a kid and spinning around in dresses and like all of that. And so that was kind of like the beginning of my journey back to like who I wanted to be. And
Wow.
so after that, I just kept, making costumes and wearing weird stuff. And it also Lady Gaga also just came out in like 2008 at that time, so I also had a lot of inspiration from her being super weird. I was like, oh, I can be weird too.
Like, and it's cool, and people like weird. Because
Yeah.
before, I think it was always, yeah, she definitely, I think, pushed the limits on what was socially acceptable or what was considered like, acceptable in pop culture. And so I can only imagine seeing her as an example and being like, okay, great, I can embrace this side of me that before I wasn't sure if it was going to be okay. What about that time? Because that was pretty quick from you just moving to Yosemite, and especially from the background you're coming from to like dressing in that costume. That's very feminine. That was also kind of weird. I don't think many people feel that comfortable to go that far when it comes to costumes. There's not many people who do it, either like you like dressing up and you're going to do it to the full extent, or you're someone who's just going to kind of play it safe. So, what about the community at that time made you feel comfortable or safe to take that chance? Or was it just a chance and you didn't know that it was a safe space for you?
Well, I definitely didn't really know that it was
Okay.
like a safe space for me, like 100%. But what I did know is that there was already this like very fabulous older gay man who was like living here in the park at the time. And they loved some crazy outfits too. I think they even at one point in time like skinned an animal in their tub for the fair, like a roadkill animal. Like they were very much legendary and like very I like very much like looked up to them. And so like I knew that there was at least one person there in the park at the time who was
Mm,
like who knew, you know? And I was like, okay, so like this guy, we get it. So like even though I didn't think that it was like an environment that I would like totally be like accepted in when I was, getting into my costume, I knew that there was going to be at least one other. And I'm pretty sure that year actually that he dressed up as Lady Gaga and he had all of this crazy tulle and these big crazy glasses and a wig, but still had his beard. Um, and glitter, and it was fabulous. And so I kind of like that is what made me feel safe, is knowing that okay, there's at least one other who's like me or like how I want to be. And
hmm.
so like I'm just gonna do it. And I'm just gonna start doing that because there's nobody, my mom's not here to tell me
Right.
no, that's gay. I don't know. There's no one here to tell me that I can't wear that dress or make these costumes or whatever.
I love that. I didn't know that you had an inspiration because
Yes,
when you were describing that person, I thought that's kind of what you were to me. And I'm sure I can only imagine whoever else, especially just seeing the people who are drawn to you. Oh my gosh, I love that you had you had your a you back then. That's
exactly.
really
I was
dope.
like, this guy's the
Aww.
queen.
Wow. And now you are the queen.
Yeah,
The handed off the baton. Was there
yeah. I
an
actually
official
just
handing
got to
off,
see them
or what was that?
2 days ago. I just got to see them.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Are
it was
they?
wonderful. They were visiting the park randomly.
That's so cool. So is there like an official like handing off, like, okay, I'm giving this to you now? Like, did you guys have that moment when this person left, or what was that transition like for you kind of like stepping into that? I don't know if you like realize what you're stepping into, but yeah, what was that time like?
Oh, it's so funny because he definitely was like, you gotta keep it. You gotta keep being you. He's like, you just
Yes.
keep being you and keep being fabulous and like,
Yeah.
being putting yourself out there. And it definitely did feel like there was like a passing of the torch. And that sounds so cliche, but it really did when it was like a message of love, like and like, it's sad that I'm leaving, but you're gonna continue to be fabulous. Right. And so I thought that was I think that's pretty magical.
That is so beautiful. That was like your own fairy godmother or something. Like,
Yes.
it's like I bestow this on you. Keep doing you.
Yes. I
I
have so much
love that.
admiration for him.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Oh, that was so neat to learn that about you. Thanks for sharing. So, what has that journey been like then from baby Justin to where you are today and living in Yosemite? Like, what has inspired you to continue to live your truth other than that person? Because I think, other people I know, even if they know there's just one person in the room that will have their back, or that they know is also going to like kind of match their energy and their vibe, that's not always enough for some folks. And so what has kept you going all these years, even with your mentor essentially leaving the park? How have you been able to like maintain staying true to like you and what brings you joy?
Well, in the beginning years, even after McCrae left, I kind of just didn't really care what it like. I got into this point of time where I was like, I don't care if people are gonna judge me for my costumes and my da 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 da. And, you know, I don't care if I'm gay Justin anymore, because that's who I was in high school, that gay one, that gay kid. And so like I could just dress however I want and, be however I want and live in the woods. Um, in in the beginning of my times and up until, just some years ago, it was definitely not, the wonderful magical experience that I would like it to be. I had a lot of problems, which I feel like is a story for a lot of queer people, especially queer people who experience, you know, trauma at different levels, at different points in their life, is like from a lot of time, even though I felt a lot and was very passionate about a lot of things, especially for queer people at a time where, we were still trying to fight for marriage equality and stuff like that. I was also dealing with, alcohol and substance abuse issues. And so that really like hindered my ability when I look back to like do and care more. And so like unfortunately, like a good period of my time in Yosemite, I didn't use to my advantage like I would have liked to have because of that. But
Mm,
even during that time, I was really able to grow and foster this really powerful support structure
mm,
that I had never really had before. So when I did decide to, make a change and take advantage of like all the opportunities that I had with my connections to Mariposa Mental Health that originally got me my job back in the park, as well as just the, a fact that I had insurance and stuff, I was able to like seek treatment and it all really worked well because I really fell back on my support system. And it's been since then that I've really been able to like act on my inspirations to, you know, make
yeah.
not only my voice heard, but like other people in the park's voice heard, even when sometimes, they don't want to hear it. So all in all, in my, 16 years of living here in Yosemite, it has been definitely a experience of growth and change, and overall a wonderful experience, and something that I would definitely try again if I had to go back and I was 18 years old and I had the opportunity to like not go to Yosemite or go to Yosemite. I would choose Yosemite again because this is a magical place. I feel like that can like really like it can heal people and it can bring people a sense of family and togetherness that maybe they don't have elsewhere. So
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. Oh, well, it's good to know that you would do it all again because, of course, And I appreciate you touching on like not everything has been amazing. Not everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows, but at the end of the day, like that's got you to where you are today. And I can't help but wonder if by you just embracing who you are and living in your truth, if that is how you have attracted your community, because people are like seeing you do you and be so inspired and in love with that they're just drawn to you and then want to support you in those ways. I would hope that that's the case, but I know that the people who at least I've ever heard about talk about you, it has always been that is that like they're just so in awe and inspired by like the way, like I told you earlier, the way that you're walking, the way that you exist, the way that the energy that you bring into a space. I'll never forget, it was in Curry, and I remember we were like going in, I forget what that area is where they like have the buffet food, but I remember you would come
Pavilion.
in. Thank you, the pavilion. And they like you walked in and you literally, you just out of nowhere, you were by yourself and you just started strutting like you were walking down a runway. And everybody was looking like, who is that? And it was my first summer. And I remember I knew of you at the time, but I will never forget like just being like, Justin, that's Justin. And I fucking love the energy that you were bringing. And then you just went about your business and got your food and walked out. And everybody was like, who the fuck was that? So, anyways, I wonder if that is part of it. If like by the time when you did accept you and like who you are, even if you didn't know it at the moment fully, if that wasn't like a fully formed thought in your head, I wonder if that shift is really where your community started to form because people were just drawn to you and drawn to the love that you're having for yourself at least, and you starting to just like believe in that part of yourself. So I don't know. I don't know if you agree or not,
I
but
would, yeah, I would definitely agree. And it was a really interesting change because like going to school in Mariposa, it was very difficult because, I was just like that gay kid. And so I didn't get to make a lot of those connections. And I didn't feel like I had like a lot of people that, were my friends and stuff like that. And so,
yeah.
when I was in Yosemite and you do notice, you're like, oh wow, lots of people are saying hi to me. Lots of people from across
Hmm.
the way, they're saying hi, Justin, how you doing? Blah blah blah. People are telling me oh, you're funny, da 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 da, and then
Yeah.
um you're like, oh, these people are drawn to you. They're drawn to your energy and your vibe, whether it be like, they see you and you're strutting around or like da da da, or like, you're cracking them up at the register, you know. I
Yeah.
definitely feel, and I feel like that's still true today. Like, I definitely feel like that's like a gift that I have, that I'm just kind of like a magnetic person, and that like people are drawn to me because of my authenticity. And
Yeah.
so,
I agree. Yeah. Well, thanks for touching on that for me. You had mentioned that your journey had inspired you to want to advocate for others. And I was wondering, like, what exactly has that looked like? Because there's something that comes to mind for me, but I wanted to know if there was other things that maybe I'm not aware of. But what does that look like for you once you came into your own and you started to uplift others' voices?
well, so like a big thing that like I feel like that really, uh when I stopped drinking and I was just, noticing, especially during like the Trump administration and how rough things were going then. I just felt like things were getting rough with the queer community here and abroad, across the country. And we had also like just had this whole company changeover thing, and it was like still
Hmm.
pretty fresh. And so there was still like a lot of wondering of, how that company was going to be.
Yeah.
And I just remember really wanting to like do what everybody else does, which is go out to where they fucking, excuse my language, just to go out to like where their places are, like their city halls and all of that. And they go out
Mhm.
and they make their voices heard and they make themselves seen
Yeah.
and uh, bring those issues that we are passionate about to people. And I also thought that there are people from all over the place that come here. And so our
Mhm.
viewability is
Mhm.
broad.
Yeah.
Um, and so like, you know, one of the things that I helped to start our pride parade, like our first pride parade, right? I've also done when Roe v. Wade was struck down, I was like, all right, I got some signs. We're gonna go cause some good trouble and we're gonna stomp around this place and let all of these people know that it doesn't matter where you live, there are people that are gonna resist these
Yeah.
kinds of like, you know, crazy changes that are starting to happen in our lives. And I feel another part about it is like I feel empowered when I do these things, when I stand at those, when I stand at the corner for Palestine and I get honks, I feel empowered. And so um, being able to like have that as something that awakened in my like recovery journey and being able to like inspire other people to come and join with me, whether it be for pride, whether it be for women's rights and abortion, or whether it be for um, Palestine and the genocide in Gaza. Um, it's something that I've been able to like use what we've talked about earlier, which is people are magnetized towards me. I've been able to use that to get people to get other people. And so, that's something that I've been like, I'm very proud of. And I have a lot of pride in because I feel like we're also kind of normalizing it here in the park. Like,
Mm.
I feel like I want the park to know that like we're all people and you're basically like a small town. And
Yeah.
if there's something that's going on, we have the right to like show up and speak about it. So,
Exactly. Yeah, well said. And also, did you just hit 2 years of sobriety?
oh, I actually 5 years.
Oh my gosh, Justin, I didn't realize it been that long.
Yeah.
Well, congrats. I was thinking like I feel like I glazed over that. I didn't want to say I mentioned it earlier, but I honestly have just been so inspired by it. Just want to touch on that. Your journey with that and your openness to share. Even in the moments when you're like, yeah, it hasn't been easy. I've struggled, but I'm here. And so I just love that so much. And I'm so proud of you. So thank you for you just being you, but also it's, especially when it's someone that I feel like I've adored you from afar and to see that it's like feel like I've been secretly cheering you on, even if I'm not doing it always in your face. By just seeing you make those positive changes has been really impactful for me. So just wanted to say congratulations again on that. And I'm really excited
Thank
for
you
you.
so much.
And I'm also excited to hear that. And I think that's what's tough for some folks too, especially when they're in a dark place, is that you feel like you don't have something else to live for, or that you don't have like a cause or a mission to get behind. I think it can feel like you've almost lost hope, right? Because especially with substance abuse, that's something that, people lean on, especially as someone who has also had moments like that as well. I've definitely had to question myself of like, okay, what is life other than just these moments, and like really making sure that I had something that I was living for other than just when I was using those moments to get me through whatever situation I was dealing with at the time. So I'm really glad to hear that you were able to get behind other things that are important to you and that you value. And I can only imagine how much that's really like been a saving grace for you in ways. I was curious, like, if you could go back, how did the whole Pride event start? Like, where did that even come from? Were you just talking to somebody? Because you mentioned that, especially during the Trump administration, that, there were definitely some concerns going on in our political climate during that time. Not just that time, but, And so, how did that even come about? Like, I know you said that you have such a platform in Yosemite, but like, can you tell me like where this really like actually came to fruition, this idea?
Yeah, well, on the for like first thing is our queer community has just grown exponentially over the years.
Yeah.
Our trans community, especially. Um, but so like that's one factor. One factor is like, oh my gosh, there are so much more of us here. That's amazing. The second factor was, of course, the Trump administration and all of just the crazy things that we were constantly going through. And then here in the park, the pandemic. The
Mm,
pandemic happened. We were just like isolated here for a hot minute, and things were like really crazy. And then when we finally brought people back, it was still crazy. And so I feel like the first Pride parade was born out of like being like frustrated with the government, being like cooped up for all of this time and not being able to experience any like that many moments with your friends. Everyone's cooped up, it was really tough. um and
mhm,
just wanting to like have a real pride march and have a real thing that wasn't just like another party in a kitchen or whatever.
mhm,
I wanted something that was like gonna be real and that was going to show everyone that we're here and we're everywhere. Um, and so the first Pride Parade was basically just like me sending out a bunch of Instagram messages to a bunch of my friends and then telling a bunch of people in Huff to meet me um, at the Huff ice rink parking lot, at noon and, be there. And I went and I bought a bunch of little pride flags to like pass out. And then I had my own like pride flag that was an American flag, but it had like pink triangles for the stars and rainbow stripes. And I was like, we're gonna go marching. And we ended up marching, all through the valley, and we ended up marching into the Awani Hotel, into the public space, which is their whole bottom floor. And we got a really amazing picture of us, walking through that Awani hallway with the beautiful floors and the iron chandeliers above us and us waving our pride flags. Um, and like also, part of it was we wanted to disrupt the system a little bit. Listen, like it's all nice and good to like, spend all this money at all of these places to like come on vacation, but there are things that are happening to people. And sometimes
mhm,
you got to interrupt these people's vacation to bring to light things that are happening and let them know that nowhere is safe from the repercussions of what's going on to the people. Um, and so it ended up really becoming a huge thing. It became a huge thing. And it also became like not like an outrage, but it was like the entire Awani. I feel like a big part of it was probably like the Awani hotel staff, but it was like nothing like that had ever happened before, I feel like. And so, like, they were all clutching their pearls to not only the company, but also National Park Service. And so that's how the official Pride, like the official MPS Pride, actually got created the following year. Because I believe the MPS was like, okay, there's enough of them to where they can
Yes.
start to like really disrupt some people. They're, they got signs, they're marching through everywhere. Maybe we should get our hands on it. We
Right.
can have some control. So, and then that's what happened the next year. And then the next year, they ended up planning it without me. But it turned out really, really well. And it was only growing from then up until last year. And last year, maybe because it's an election year, who knows? But first, MPS, someone, I don't remember exactly who it was, but someone at the top was like, we don't want MPS people participating in a pride parade in their uniforms. Da 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 da. So essentially, Pride's canceled. And I was livid because how are you going to take something away from me that I started and then make it your own and then do it and then decide it's done? So of course it was that was not going to be the last from me. So we did have a pride, but I had to jump through all these hoops
You had to
to
get a
do it.
permit and everything, right?
Huh?
And
Yeah,
then
I
make you
had to
get like
get
a
a
permit,
permit.
and it was like this whole thing.
Yeah, I had to get a permit. And the thing is, like, the MPS people didn't get to, like, participate in the way that they should have and could have and have been for, a while now. And it's just crazy because, like, we have gay, like, national park monuments or whatever. Stonewall is like a gay is like a gay national park spot.
It
So like
is. Yeah.
but that's the thing that only made me be like, oh, you're trying to disenfranchise us. Oh, you're trying to silence us. Oh, well, we're gonna do it anyways. Um, and so when I had this, I had to have a whole meeting with that was facilitated by the company with MPS, and they were like, this is where you can and can't protest, and in the past I know you've done this, but we're not gonna have you doing that anymore, and blah blah blah. And they're like basically threatening me. They're like, this could lead to problems with the company, this could lead to yeah. But I was like, what are you gonna do, arrest me? And then what, I eat a hot pocket in the John Muir Hotel? I was not worried about it. I was like, I want to have it even more now that you guys are trying to put the whole kibosh on it. Now that that's happening, now I want it even more. And so I was able to organize that Pride Parade. I was able to get our permit, and we did do what we wanted, and we went where we wanted, and all's well that ended well, basically. But NBS didn't get upset with us for going past the places where we didn't have a permit, and we didn't cause any bad trouble.
Yeah, I love earlier when you said good trouble. I was like, yes, there is such a thing as
Yes,
good trouble. And
Rap Lewis.
exactly. I also have heard this like title given to folks who are causing disruptions, and it was like, you are a change maker, right? And so, especially in the face of adversity, the fact that you were like, I can peacefully have a parade and protest. I don't need you to like try to limit me in these ways when there's no need for that, right? And realizing and recognizing like kind of some of the unspoken messages that were behind those actions. I know definitely there was an uproar. So I remember you were one of the first people I saw posting on social media about the National Park Service pretty much trying to not allow pride to occur within the parks. And I have friends who work at other national parks, and people were in an uproar. Like people were so upset, especially as the message started to get out, and it was kind of trickling down from higher up in Washington and going down to like the individuals in the parks. Because yeah, there are quite. I was talking to someone else who said like the outdoors is pretty queer. Like there's quite a bit of people in the outdoors that like either you're an ally or you're queer to like some degree. But regardless, like we appreciate having that representation. And like you said, national parks are kind of like their own little like towns or their own little worlds or in their own little bubble. And especially in places like this that are such a platform where people are coming from all over the world, for that to happen and to try to limit some of those opportunities for people to express themselves, I'm like, no, this is not the place to do it, especially in Yosemite National Park of all places. Yosemite kind of like sets the tone, I think, for the Park Service in many ways when things
For
occur
sure.
there. So I'm sure, especially what you were being very vocal about just kind of some of what you were dealing with during that time of trying to still keep this event consistent and ongoing. I wouldn't be surprised if that definitely was seen by others and was like, oh, dang it, Justin's starting again. We got to do something. I guess we got to schedule a meeting. We got to work with her because if not, so how many years has the Pride Parade been going on then? What year are we in now?
I would say we are in it. This was year 4, I
Okay.
believe. So I think it was maybe it's year 3. No,
Because you said 20, you were mentioning like the pandemic. So I'm wondering if you
I
started it
think
that
maybe it was
summer.
2020.
Okay. Yeah.
No, it would have been 2021.
Yeah. Because I think things were shut down in 2020.
They were. It was rough.
Yeah.
So yeah, so probably like 3 years.
That's amazing. That's really
Um,
neat.
and yeah, they've been like it's very interesting to see MPS go and like support it so gung ho
And
and
then try
do
to take
so
it.
much for it. Like, because it wasn't just like a parade, it was a week long of events. They had
Yeah.
some talks and they had hikes. And so it was not only an opportunity for us to have a pride parade, but an opportunity for like other queer people in the community to like meet other queer people and go on hikes and find connections of
Mhm.
like, hey, just in case you thought you were the only cross dresser that likes to hike, you're not. There's more of us. And if you want to come on a cross dressing hike up to, Yosemite Falls and take a picture at the top, we've got one scheduled on Tuesday. You
I
know?
love that.
And
That's really cool.
I feel like the fight's definitely not over because with this incoming administration, who knows what's going to happen, number one. And number two, I feel like since they were already getting a wild hair last year, then they're probably going to get one this year too. And so, I hope, my biggest hope is just that we can keep pushing up against the system and, you know, being able to express ourselves here in our not in all of our national parks. Really, all of our national parks, if they've got people living there, then I feel like people have the right to speak up there.
Exactly. Exactly. No, well said. Yeah, I thanks for mentioning how much your parade evolved into the, like you said, it was a whole week long where there was events and like you said, guided walks. I mean, I honestly can't help but think that you have not been given enough credit for just how much pride has become an important event in the national parks. Like, I mean, I've even seen, other events going on in other parks, and I don't remember seeing that until I saw your first parade in Yosemite. I mean, so I'm not gonna say you were the first, but I wouldn't be surprised if that definitely, like, kind of planted that seed. And especially with like the internship program that I manage, there's so many folks who are transgender and queer who are saying that like, they don't see that representation, and that when seeing the National Park Service, a federal agency, get behind this cause, it was something that really changed their view of national parks and like how they felt in this space and how they felt safe here, of like, okay, maybe this is a place where I can exist freely and is possibly safe for me to, where I'll be supported. um, I also can't help but think about, by you just creating this event, how much you have really helped the community in Yosemite to connect with one another. So I remember even when I worked there, and I hear about this in other national parks too, is that usually it's like there's a park service and there's other entities, right? There's the concessionaire, and then there's also like a conservancy, like a partner of the park, but it usually feels very siloed, and there's not many opportunities or events that encourages the community to connect with one another. And it was really beautiful to see people from the Park Service, from the Conservancy, and the concessionaire joining in on these events in Yosemite. And then I can't really speak for other national parks, but at least I had recognized some individuals when I saw photos, and I was like, that is so cool, because otherwise, when are we seeing that really occurring, especially on that scale? So I just have to say kudos to you for really bringing an opportunity for everyone to be able to get behind and like connect with one another.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I totally agree. You would never know that we had gay rangers if we didn't get the opportunity for our gay rangers to come and meet our our gay employees who aren't part of Park Service, and
Exactly.
that is part of representation too, you know what I mean? It's like it's cool to know that in all of the different little factions that we
Mm-hmm.
have here in Yosemite,
Mm-hmm.
there are queer people sprinkled about.
Exactly. I'm curious, when you still ended up hosting the parade slash protest this last summer, um, did you have any Park Service employees come not in uniform, or were they not supposed to go at all, even like on their own private time outside of like wearing their uniform?
So this last pride that we have, I feel like we didn't really have a lot of the MPS kids, maybe a small handful. I would say most of it were most of it was Aramark employees. I think a big part of it was there was just some fear, I think, about repercussions, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's understandable. Like the way I looked at it was like, I'm in a union, that's how I looked at it. I was like, I'm in a union, so I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna roll the dice. And if I gotta catch a ride up, I'll catch a ride up. But things aren't the same for everybody. Um, so it was definitely a little bit more of like a family style, you know lots of new employees, which was really fun, but then also some good friends that have been coming to the pride since the beginning. My good friend Monica and Jen, they've been coming to like all of the prides, and so it was really great to see them. And then we get to discuss how we've seen it grow and change.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that there was like a lot of opposition from Park Service, and in my opinion, like scare tactics of saying that this isn't going to be a thing and we can't do it and blah blah blah, I was happy that there was enough of us in Yosemite, in the Yosemite hospitality zone, to be able to come together and still make our voices heard. I think at one point in time we had like 25-30 people. And especially with the Pride Parade through the park, sometimes you catch some people and you collect them, and then sometimes you disperse people, as you go. Sometimes someone goes on that 15-minute break and walks around Curry with you and then heads back to the front desk. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
So it definitely it felt a little broken up. It didn't feel as much um as it didn't feel like it did before when we were all together and it was official.
Yeah.
Um, but it was still very much a powerful experience. We really actually this last Pride, we really a lot of times I like to think that a lot of times our Pride parade really like to bring to the forefront um, different communities that may be experiencing things. Sometimes some communities are being affected by stuff more at one any given time. So
Mm-hmm.
I remember in the beginning of our prides, um, we were really big about trans women of color and the dangers that they face all across the country. And so, trans lives matter, Black trans lives matter. Those kinds of rallying calls were like a big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, I made it a point to have a big part of our pride bring to light what's happening in Gaza and in Palestine. And so not only did we have pride flags, but we also had Palestinian flags and, really chanted for real freedom for everybody. So
Yeah.
I feel like something that's really wonderful about our Pride Parade is it can change, and whatever the message is, it can be gotten across because there's enough of us there to like bring it to the forefront of this park and these people's experience, and we make it so they can't go their day without interacting and knowing that being reminded, hey, trans people all across the country are facing violence. Trans
Yeah.
women of color experience that violence at a higher rate. When we protested and marched after Roe v. Wade fell, and were, calling to abort the court, we were talking about what's gonna what's gonna happen to women
Yeah.
after the dust settles. And so I feel like that's one of the pride itself is a powerful political action, I believe, and an act of resistance to the status quo and the white heterosexual patriarchy. And so um it's a blessing to be able to like be part of it and to be able to like work on it and to help gather other people to go and like do that.
Well said. Yeah. As you were speaking, and again, it just reminded me of what you said earlier of you just using this platform and the stage that, and also the energy that you bring into spaces and how magnetic you are to really shed light on causes that are important to you, and that you think are deserving of being uplifted. I have heard when I've had discussions with other people that, especially when it comes to issues that are affecting one particular group, it's like, oh, we shouldn't be mixing some issues that are affecting one group with a different cause, because sometimes that might, take away from the message of, like, let's say, for example, this last summer when you were highlighting what's going on in Palestine and the genocide in Gaza, we were using that in like highlighting that during the parade slash protest. Did you feel like there was a conflict, or do you feel like that we can still be able to shed light on multiple causes at the same time without, taking away from the importance of one or the other? Do you think that we can still hold space for all and that not being an issue? How do you feel like that went this last summer?
I feel like we definitely can do both. I feel like um a big part of pride and what we want in the end from pride is freedom and dignity and respect and the right to be able to live our lives
Yeah.
safely.
Right.
And I feel like that doesn't just apply to queer people.
Right.
And so I feel like I also I also feel like, especially as Americans, and also um, white people, um, we it's easier for us to be gay. I feel like there, I just feel like there are less like stigmas and within like our communities. Um,
Mm.
and so I and also with a lot of times gay men are still also men, and so they tend to get listened to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like, you know, even though in reality, um our uh whole pride and the very beginnings came from trans women of color.
Right.
um it's kind of been like hijacked by cisgender gay men.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's where a lot of the power lies. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that like we've got a lot of privilege and a lot of power in being able to just go and do these prides and know that we can just do them. And I feel like
Yeah.
it I feel like it's a disservice to not use that power um,
Mm-hmm.
for good things, even if those things aren't fun and maybe don't
Mm-hmm.
exactly align with gay pride. Uh,
Yeah.
because we have the power, like we have the um the spotlight because we've done this pride parade, where all of these people, we've got all of these flags and stuff, we've got the attention of the people. And if we're gonna have the attention of the people and we're gonna, go and try and bring these things to light, we might as well use that opportunity and use that privilege that we have to be able to do that,
Mm-hmm.
to bring to light situations that, even though maybe aren't we're not directly involved in, bring to light those situations and lift those up and bring those into the conversation.
Yeah.
um and I think that that's like really important, because otherwise you kind of just have a party that's walking. I like that pride can be, you know a message bringer and a change maker.
Yeah.
So
Thanks. I agree. And, I can't help but think that that's almost another tactic of those who don't want people who are being disenfranchised, no matter whatever the reason is or your background. There's always this idea of like, that saying like the united we stand, divided we fall. And it's like, of course, they don't want people who are all maybe experiencing some kind of discrimination from maybe one group or the same group to be able to have those discussions of like, maybe we should unite together, or maybe we can use one platform that's having some success to highlight some other issues that maybe aren't really getting much attention brought to them. And so I appreciate you sharing that and touching on that. Like, yeah, if you have an opening and you have a voice and people are listening, then use that and use that in a good way. As much as pride is fun, I do think that sometimes people look at it as it's a one big party. And yes, there should be a celebration, but there's also still so much that we still need to continue to fight for, whether that's the rights of the queer community. And there are still so many people, there's so many levels to it. And like you touched on, there are still folks in the queer community who are not given the same respect or the same rights as other people who are in different groups but identify as being queer. And so I didn't realize that you had, I remember noticing that you had like certain messages that you would incorporate, but I didn't realize how thoughtful it was. And for you, every year being like, okay, this is going to be kind of the message we're focusing on this time. And it's not just pride, and we're not just going to focus on like, okay, we're queer and we're here, but also there are other issues that we need to touch on. And I just appreciate that about you so much. You were such a force. And I'm so excited. Now I'm like, how come I haven't been to one of these events yet? So I need to make a point to come out because I'm literally just over the mountains from you. But all these years, I still just like have been watching from afar and admiring on social media. So I need to do my part too to show some support. And I can't appreciate you enough in the work that you've been doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
and with the social media, that's one thing that I feel like National Park Service like really did get right. You mentioned something earlier about how like, I helped plant the seed, and like I definitely agree. I helped plant the seed, and I like started to foster that little plant, but I also feel like, National Park Service, they got Patagonia to come and to like join us, and Patagonia was able to use her platform, her power, her privilege
Exactly.
to like bring it more into the light, you know?
Yes.
Then all
Yes.
of a sudden, boom, we get a cool post on Instagram, right? Thousands of people are shit talking our park and calling us slurs on the internet because we're out there in the forest, and that means we're winning. That means we're pissing off the conservatives. They feel like their space is getting taken. Um, and so like that was something that like,
Yeah.
I would really, really like love and appreciate about Patagonia is that yeah, I do have people who listen to me, and I do have like, some small like globe of influence, and like, I can help to organize something here in like our small park, but her sphere of influence is so much larger,
Yeah.
and that helps to like bring our pride into the light more. And it's
Mm.
really cool because a lot of times, I'll tell guests about our pride, and I'll be like, you can check out Yosemite Pride on Instagram, and they'll find pictures from Patagonia and all of us in front of Half Dome with our flags.
Yeah.
And, they're more likely to see her post than any of my just like regular posts. And so I feel like um that was another part of what really helped to like make our pride kind of help take flight, is because we got someone who also very much cared about our park system and about queer people being out
Mm.
in the forest and knowing that this is a space for them just as it is for the rock climbers and the hikers and the bro dudes and whatever.
So what
So
do you say to those people who are like, no, the outdoors or national parks aren't spaces for people who identify as queer? What do you say to that?
I mean, I would just say that that's really wrong. Nature in and of itself is very gay. Uh, and so,
Yes.
everybody knows that. Um, I think that they are also just unfortunately they're just like misguided. Um, Gender roles have become so deeply ingrained, and the patriarchy has been so deeply ingrained in us as a people that we assign masculinity and femininity to the most randomest and craziest things. And so like I feel like one, okay, maybe if women didn't have to be subservient to their husbands and in the kitchen for all of this time, they would have also been able to explore the outdoors and the woods. Like I love seeing stories of like, first female solo, free solo on, this rock or something like that, because it's like really amazing that women are now finally being able to get into these outdoor spaces more. And like I love seeing the old timey photos of the ladies climbing boulders in their like full regalia and their like shoes and everything. They're trying to do it. I feel like the
Yeah.
only reason the outdoors doesn't seem like a queer space is because men want it all for themselves. And they've assigned they've assigned like being in the forest um with masculinity. They've assigned making fires with being a provider, and that's masculine. You know, mountains, like people like always refer to like ships and things with female pronouns, or like boats and things like that, and like mountains a lot of times, but it's like, okay, well, all these things are women, but nature's still a man. Like nature's still for men. Like that doesn't make any sense. I feel like it's all about access, and the only reason it's a space that seems like it's not a space for queer people is because we haven't been able to access it like other people have, and
Hmm.
maybe also haven't felt welcome to access it because of the gatekeepers of nature.
Well said. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Uh, as you were speaking, you were describing other people's experience in the outdoors, and I was wondering, especially as someone who has been living in a national park for 16 years now,
Mm-hmm.
uh, what what does your ideal day look like? Because, as I was talking to you about before our discussion started, I was saying, like, your appearance wise, you don't look like what people imagine. And that's the issue, is that there is this image of like white cis hetero males wearing flannels and like being these like mountain men chopping down trees and climbing rocks. But I was just curious if you could share, like, what is your, when you're spending time in nature, like, what does your ideal day look like, just to like shed light on someone who doesn't look like this typical image, but can still enjoy these spaces. So yeah, I was just curious if you don't mind sharing that with me.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Well, I like to consider myself a lady of leisure. And so that's where I get my best Yosemite experiences from. I love to just like be at peace somewhere, and just chill, and be amongst the sounds and breezes of nature. Um, I'm not super big on hiking. I don't really like heights a lot. But I do like to walk. And so I'll just like walk around and just kind of like look, and just, even though I've lived here for so long, like I see things from different angles all the time still today.
Cool.
And so there's always like new things to see, I feel like my ideal day is like, I like wake up and it's like, I preferably it's going to be the summertime. But I wake up and I go and I take a nice walk to like get some coffee, and then like while I'm drinking my coffee, I'm hanging out, I'm smoking cigarettes, I'm watching the sun start to come up over Half Dome. Um, then I go to my house, see what's going on at the beach. I love to watch the slackliners. I love to watch volleyball. Um, I really just love the opportunity to like be at peace in Yosemite. As someone, I've experienced like a lot of things in my life and in my childhood, and I
Hmm.
struggle with my own kind of mental health problems and anxiety, and so I really really value the sense of peace and serenity that I can get from Yosemite without really having to do anything,
Yeah.
which is really
Yeah.
great. I just like to go and like be somewhere and exist there. And I might not be, bouldering or like going on these like crazy hikes, but I'm, sitting somewhere on a log watching the like sunny haze and just like chilling and experiencing. And so like that's kind of like my ideal like day. And then ideally it would roll into like a nice karaoke night at the Carabiner or something like that.
I love that. Thanks for sharing. You know, just existing in nature is not talked about enough. And a friend was joking with me recently, and she was saying, she's like, I hate when I talk to somebody about me wanting to go on a walk and they're instantly talking about, well, how much elevation did you gain? She's like, can I just go and like do a casual walk where I'm just enjoying nature in its glory, right? She's like you're pointing out, those little details. Like I don't hear enough people talk about like the little summer, like the haze that you get from the summer sunlight, or like just the breeze, or enjoying other people getting out there and being in nature. It's like, I think people are it's such a pressure to like feel like you need to get into nature and do something to the extreme. It's always like some kind of activity. And it's not considered enough of an activity to just sit and also observe and exist and just be in that space. So thank you for touching on that, because it can be so healing when I think we have to be doing something all the time, when you also just being in that space is also just enough and can also be so beneficial. And thanks for touching on also how healing has been for you in your mental health, because that's also, I think, what's drawn me to the outdoors. I never thought, I didn't really see myself represented in these spaces either, but it definitely has been life changing for me. The benefits that I have received, and a big part of it has been my mental health. And that has just like flown over into other areas of my life by having these spaces that are accessible to me, and knowing that like I also deserve to be here too has been really special. So thanks for sharing. That was really neat, because I felt like I was like taking a walk with Justin through Yosemite. I loved it so much. I was like, oh, this sounds like a great day.
Yeah, we don't always have to like do something or like go somewhere or accomplish something. Sometimes you stop and smell the flowers just to stop and smell the flowers, you
Yeah,
know.
exactly. Well said. So you've touched on, wanting to highlight, those groups or voices that aren't really being represented, especially in Yosemite and outdoor spaces. I was wondering, you mentioned a few different groups, but whose voices do you think are still missing? Like, do you have anybody in mind, or, like some kind of theme that you want to touch on maybe in the near future at one of your Pride events? I was just curious if you had any ideas of like who else we can continue to uplift with the platforms that we have.
Well, as has been the case for a long time, and I definitely see things improving. I would definitely like to see the outdoors be more of an accessible place to people of color, and African American people, and be more of a place that seems like a welcoming place for them. And then also kind of in connection to on my second ideas, I feel like it would be so beneficial for lower income and
Mhm.
people of poorer communities to be able to have access to nature like a lot of our more wealthy communities. We see these YI kids whose parents are paying thousands of dollars to send their kids up to the park for a couple weeks all the time. And
Yeah.
that's like a big industry. But it's like, wouldn't it be amazing if we could get lower income disenfranchised kids that don't get these opportunities, kids from these big cities, and we can bring them into the fray of it, bring them into the forest, and let them know that it's accessible for them too, and um, so I've definitely felt like it's kind of like there's also a little bit of a class accessing the park is also kind of like a class problem. Um,
Oh.
and so, like, I would love to see, kids who are, less well off, whose families are less well off. I'd love to see programs that help get these kids to these places and explore these places, that's not going to be, financially burdensome on their families and make it so they just don't get to do it.
Exactly.
Um, and let's see, who else should we come? I mean, I feel like, one thing, uh I feel like I've seen that's happened here, at our park, is I've seen some of our, like, changes in how they do our, like, sidewalks and stuff to make them more accessible to wheelchairs.
Mm.
And then they also, like, I heard they repaved the Mariposa Grove to make that kind of accessible. And so I think that's some growth that I've noticed, but definitely there's still a lot more that I think we could also do with, the disabled community as well. Um, Essentially, I mean, I feel like we could work to get everybody here in our national parks. It just takes effort, it takes effort, and the people in charge have to care and have to want to share these spaces,
Mm.
with
Mm.
these other people.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thanks for shedding some light on that. And I know there are a few programs that exist, or like little efforts, like there's Every Kid in a Park, where fourth graders, if they go, like, and this is if their teachers are, cooperating or in a partnership with a national park to be able to go on a field trip. The kids have to attend the field trip and then they get the park pass. But again, how many kids are really having that opportunity, especially if you don't live within driving distance of a national park? And also, or if the park's even connecting with your own campus to even start that relationship. But other than that, yeah, I mean, the first time I went to Yosemite was on a school field trip, and it was just not when I was in fourth grade, but when I was in high school. Otherwise, I don't even think I would have even known about Yosemite National Park personally, other than like you hear about it in the distance of it being a real place and somewhere that I actually could go to. You always just like, you'd hear about it from people who are well off and their family would go on vacations in the summer and go like road tripping to national parks with their family. I was like, my family don't do that. So that didn't sound like somewhere for me. So yeah, I'd love to continue that discussion if you have ideas, and that's definitely part of like the work that I'm trying to do is to create more opportunities for folks who come from different backgrounds, especially people who, haven't always had access to these spaces or felt like it was a place for them. Um, Justin, this has been so fun, and I feel like we could go on forever because I have so many other like tangents I want to go on, but I also want to be respectful of your time, and I wanted to see if there is anything that you wanted to talk about, like through our discussion, if anything else has come to mind for you, or something you want to say to like wrap things up for us.
Um, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Um, this has been wonderful. And I'm, so happy to be able to come and to be able to kind of share, my story and, some of my experiences. Um, I think that, there's still a lot of work, ahead of us in terms of being able to, like, make this space a space that's, open for everybody. Um, but I definitely, am stoked to know that, like, I'm working on it over here. You're working on it over there. And that's just us two, and we can hopefully imagine at other parks and in other places, they're seeing, like, for example, they saw our prides and so they're trying to do their own prides. And so, like, hopefully, I just want to see us continue to help to change these parks and bring them, um not only their protection and, their keeping our parks, beautiful and pristine, and keeping them healthy and protecting our environment, but also bringing to light the fact that these are like small towns. People live here. Lots of
Mm-hmm.
queer people live here, people of all kinds. And
Yeah.
the woods is for everybody. And, all you have to do is go out. You just got to walk out, and then you're there. And nobody can say, this is mine or not, because it's the magic of nature.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well said. Yeah. Oh. Well, I appreciate you so much, honestly, not just for agreeing to be one of my guests on the show, but also for just your transparency and your authenticity. Not just in our discussion today, but also the way that you live your life every day. Is I've said it to you earlier, and I will continue to say it to you, is constantly inspiring me. And I think I'm a better person for knowing you, and I'm sure other people will say the same. But yeah, it does feel good to know that I'm not the only one doing this work. And so I'm thankful to even have a connection with you and to know that you're doing what you're doing. And hopefully, there's more ways that we can collaborate together on making sure that we are bringing awareness to important causes while also, making sure that it's known that these places should be more inclusive and that it is for everybody. They're called public lands for a reason. And
Yes.
I don't think people realize that enough. Like, no, it's yours too. We all pay our tax dollars for these places. We all deserve to exist and spend time in them, no matter what that looks like. So, yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
there
we'll
are
have
no
to continue.
requirements for enjoying the woods.
Exactly. Like you said, just get outside. All you gotta do is get out and you're there.
Yeah.
It's like it's not impossible. It's so accessible. Thank you, Justin. Thank you for being you. Thanks for being on the show. And we'll definitely have to continue this discussion of like maybe we'll have to have you come back on and we can continue to have some more talks.
Maybe I can be on June's episode.
There you go.
Talk about what we're going to do
Exactly.
for Pride next year.
Hey, I love that idea. Let's definitely keep that in mind for sure.
All
Well, on
right.
that note, I'll go ahead and let you go and we'll wrap up. But again, thank you so much. And
Thank you. Appreciate
talk.
you.
All right, girl. Have a good night.
Bye.
Mm, another amazing conversation with a beautiful human being. Justin, thank you so much for being you, for agreeing to be a guest on this podcast, for your transparency, your vulnerability to share your story, speak your truth, but also for being willing to use the platforms and privileges that you have to bring awareness to other situations that are affecting people's human rights, no matter where that group is, who they are, what they look like. I found many parts of your story that aligned with my own, and I'm sure others will see a part of themselves in you as well. I really like how Justin describes pride as essentially folks just wanting freedom, dignity, respect, and the right to live safely. And it doesn't just apply to queer people, it applies to everybody. These are basic human rights, and that's all anyone asks for at the end of the day. I also appreciate, Justin, your call to action and saying that if anyone has any power, privilege, it is a disservice not to use it. Justin, thank you for choosing to use the spotlight and attention you have gained from the Pride walks that you lead in Yosemite as a platform to highlight other issues. In Justin's words, Pride can be a message bringer and a change maker. Pride is so much more than just a party. Well said. Well, again, I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Black and Wild, the podcast, and stay tuned for more episodes that will now be published on a bi weekly basis. You won't want to miss the next discussions. I have a couple more good ones coming up for you. Thanks. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. The podcast can be found not only on Spotify, you can see it visually on YouTube. There's an Instagram channel, it's on Amazon Music as well as Apple Music.